The woman everyone ignored was the only reason the hospital lights stayed on that night. That was the sentence Dr. Samuel Hayes would later repeat to every reporter who asked how St. Mercy Medical Center had survived its worst financial crisis in 20 years. But on the morning Claire Whitmore returned to the building, no one looked at her as if she could save anything. She stepped through the automatic glass doors at 7:12 a.m., wearing a plain gray coat, low black flats, and a canvas tote with one frayed handle, the kind of bag people noticed only when they wanted to judge the person carrying it. The lobby smelled of disinfectant, burnt coffee, and fresh flowers from the gift shop, that strange hospital mixture of hope and fear pretending to share the same air. Nurses moved quickly past her. Families sat hunched under fluorescent lights, clutching paper cups and unanswered prayers. A little boy in dinosaur pajamas pressed his palm against the aquarium glass near admissions, watching orange fish circle their tiny kingdom as if they knew something adults had forgotten. Claire paused for half a second, not because she was lost, but because 5 years earlier she had walked these same marble floors as Dr. Nathan Caldwell's wife, the woman who smiled beside him at donor dinners, remembered the names of every board member's spouse, and stood quietly behind his ambition while everyone applauded him for standing tall. Back then, Nathan had called St. Mercy our future, though he had meant his future because men like Nathan had a gift for using shared words to describe private crowns. Now his name gleamed on a bronze plaque near the surgical wing. Nathan Caldwell, M.D., Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Claire read it without flinching. The letters were polished, expensive, and cold. Much like the man himself, humanity's favorite material for building idols before acting shocked when they turn out to be hollow. Volunteer services is down the hall, the receptionist said without looking up, sliding a visitor badge across the counter as if Claire were already taking too long. Claire accepted it with a polite smile. "I'm here for the development office," she said. "Temporary coordinator position." The receptionist finally glanced at her, eyes moving over the modest coat, the bare ring finger, the old tote. "Right. 3rd floor. Elevator B. No welcome. No curiosity. Just the quick dismissal reserved for women who did not arrive wrapped in money." Claire clipped the badge to her coat and walked toward the elevators. As the doors opened, a familiar laugh drifted from the corridor behind her, smooth, confident, practiced for audiences. Her hand tightened around the tote strap before she turned. Nathan Caldwell stood near the coffee kiosk in a navy suit beneath his white physician's coat, silver watch catching the morning light, dark hair perfectly styled, his smile tilted toward the woman beside him. Vanessa Reed, St. Mercy's new director of communications, leaned close with a tablet in one hand and a glossy confidence Claire recognized instantly. Vanessa was beautiful in the polished way expensive rooms demanded, all cream blouse, gold earrings, and controlled warmth that could vanish the second cameras did. Nathan saw Claire at the elevator. For one suspended breath, his expression emptied. Then the old smile returned, softer at the edges, sharpened underneath. "Claire," he said, crossing the lobby as if greeting a former acquaintance instead of the woman whose life he had once dismantled one quiet humiliation at a time. "I didn't expect to see you here." Vanessa's eyes flicked from Claire's tote to her shoes, then back to her face. "You two know each other?" Nathan hesitated just long enough to make the answer cruel. "Claire is my ex-wife." There it was, placed gently on the floor between them like a glass object meant to cut anyone who stepped wrong. Vanessa's smile widened by half an inch. "How nice. Are you volunteering?" "Working," Claire said. "In development." Nathan gave a small, almost sympathetic nod. "That makes sense. You were always good with thank you notes and seating charts." The words were harmless enough for a public lobby, which made them worse. They carried 5 years of dinners where he had corrected her in front of surgeons, 5 years of being told she was sweet but not strategic, useful but not, impressive, present but never essential. Claire felt the old pain rise, familiar and bitter, then settle. Pain, she had learned, was not a command. It was only weather. "I suppose every hospital needs someone to keep things organized," she said. Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had expected embarrassment and disliked receiving calm instead. Before he could answer, a small commotion stirred near the pediatric hallway. A woman in a faded green sweater hurried past them, her face pale, holding the hand of a thin little girl with a pink backpack and a paper hospital bracelet around her wrist. The child looked no older than 9. Her lips had a faint bluish tint, and every few steps she paused, as if her own breath had become something she had to negotiate with. Claire watched them disappear toward cardiology. Vanessa sighed, already turning back to her tablet. "Emily Parker," she said. "No insurance worth mentioning, complicated case, terrible optics if the foundation committee doesn't find a solution." Nathan's jaw tightened. Wall like a museum of wealthy consciences. Claire stepped inside and found 3 desks, 2 ringing phones, a printer coughing paper, and a young assistant named Molly trying to balance a stack of invitations against a cup of coffee that clearly had no faith in her. Mount Public Relations. "We are tightening the gala message this year. Hope, innovation, excellence, that sort of thing. Dr. Caldwell will speak about surgical leadership, I will handle donor engagement, and you can organize the silent auction forms." Claire looked up. "What about pediatric cardiology?" Vanessa blinked. "What about it?" "The department is short almost $12 million over the next 3 years. If the gala is about need, that should be central." Vanessa smiled with the soft patience people use when explaining glassware to raccoons. "Need makes donors uncomfortable unless it is packaged correctly. Children, yes. Financial panic, no? We inspire generosity. We do not beg." Claire nodded once, because arguing with vanity in a pencil skirt was not on her schedule. "Understood." Vanessa studied her for a moment, perhaps disappointed that Claire had not withered. "Nathan mentioned you used to help him with events. That should be useful. Just keep everything simple and clean." After she left, Molly exhaled from the next desk. "She scares the printer into working." Claire almost smiled. That is a rare talent. By noon, Claire had sorted the gala lists, corrected 3 donor names Vanessa had misspelled, and quietly moved Emily Parker's file into her locked drawer. At 1:15 p.m., she took the service elevator down to pediatrics with a stack of forms no one had asked her to deliver. The hallway was painted with clouds and cartoon balloons, cheerful little lies against the white noise of monitors. Emily sat in a recliner near the window, a blanket over her knees and a worn paperback open in her lap. Dana Parker stood nearby, speaking with a billing coordinator whose voice had become too gentle, which is how bad news dresses itself when it wants to seem polite. "There may be charitable options," the coordinator said, "but the review process takes time." Dana nodded as if time were not exactly what her daughter did not have. Claire waited until the coordinator left, then approached with a smile small enough not to frighten anyone. "Hi, Emily. I am Claire. I work upstairs." Emily looked at her badge. "Are you a doctor?" "No. I am much less impressive and usually less tired." Emily giggled, then coughed lightly into her sleeve. Dana touched her shoulder. "Sweetheart." Claire pretended not to notice the fear in the mother's eyes, because fear in a hospital deserves privacy when it can get it. "I heard you like books," Claire said. Emily lifted the paperback. "Stories make the machines less annoying. That is one of the best literary reviews I have ever heard." The girl smiled, and for a moment the room seemed to warm by 1 degree. Claire stayed 15 minutes, long enough to talk about dragons, 5th grade, and the hospital cafeteria's tragic interpretation of macaroni and cheese. Before leaving, she handed Dana a plain card. "If billing calls again, ask them to wait until tomorrow before making any decisions." Dana frowned. "Why?" Claire glanced at Emily, then back to her mother. "Because sometimes paperwork moves faster than people expect." That evening, after the office emptied and the hospital settled into its night rhythm of squeaking carts and distant elevator chimes, Claire locked her door and took the sealed envelope from her tote. Inside were the incorporation documents for the CW Angel Fund, the transfer authorization from Whitmore Legacy Foundation, and a letter addressed to Dr. Samuel Hayes. $12 million for pediatric cardiology. Immediate coverage for Emily Parker's surgery. Full anonymity required. Claire signed her name in blue ink, each stroke steady, each letter closing a door Nathan still believed was open. Then she placed everything into the interoffice courier pouch and wrote only one instruction on the front: deliver directly to the hospital president before morning. By the time Claire arrived the next morning, St. Mercy had changed in the peculiar way buildings change when money enters them, not visibly, not honestly, but through whispers moving faster than elevators. The development office phones were already ringing before 8 o'clock, Molly was standing beside the printer with both hands pressed to her mouth, and Vanessa Reed's office door was closed, which meant someone inside was either being praised or professionally skinned. Claire hung her gray coat on the back of her chair and opened her email as if she did not already know what had happened. At the top of her inbox was a message from Dr. Samuel Hayes, short, formal, and careful enough to have been written by a man holding a lit match inside a paper factory. Please come to my office at your earliest convenience. Claire read it once, then closed the laptop. Molly rolled her chair closer, eyes wide. Did you hear? She whispered, because humans have never encountered life-changing news they did not immediately try to pass through drywall. Someone donated $12 million. $12 million. For pediatric cardiology. Anonymous. The accounting team thought it was a mistake until the bank confirmed it. Claire reached for the stack of gala seating cards. That is wonderful. Wonderful. Molly stared at her. Claire, that is not wonderful. That is miracle level, call your mother, rethink your student loans kind of news. Claire allowed herself a small smile. Then we should make sure the thank you letter is excellent. Down the hall, Vanessa's door opened with theatrical force. She stepped out holding her tablet, her smile bright and brittle, followed by Nathan, whose expression had shifted from morning confidence to irritated calculation. Dr. Hayes walked behind them, calm but unusually pale. He was a tall man in his early 60s, with silver hair, tired eyes, and the steady posture of someone who had spent decades giving terrible news kindly. His gaze found Claire at once, and unlike the receptionist, unlike Vanessa, unlike Nathan, he did not look through her. He looked at her. Ms. Whitmore, he said. Nathan's head turned slightly at the formality. Vanessa noticed it too. People like Vanessa collected shifts in tone the way weather stations collected pressure changes. May I see you? Dr. Hayes asked. Claire stood and followed him past the framed donor portraits and into his office, where the city appeared behind the windows in pale winter light. The room smelled faintly of leather, coffee, and the lilies his assistant replaced every Monday. On his desk lay the envelope she had sent, open now, its contents arranged with reverence usually reserved for legal documents. And newborns. For a long moment, Dr. Hayes said nothing. Then he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I have worked in hospitals for 34 years, he said quietly. I have seen people give for tax benefits, reputation, grief, guilt, faith, and sometimes actual goodness, which is always shocking, because apparently civilization still has a few unexpired coupons. But this is different. Claire sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. The conditions are simple. I read them. The pediatric cardiology unit remains open for at least 3 years. Emily Parker's surgery is covered immediately. Families without adequate insurance are reviewed by medical need, not public relations value. And my name stays out of it. He leaned back, studying her with something close to sorrow. Nathan does not know. Nathan rarely knew what mattered unless someone engraved his name on it. Dr. Hayes gave a faint, unwilling smile. You understand this will create questions. Let them ask the hospital why a child was saved. That should be enough of an answer. Before he could respond, a sharp knock sounded on the door, and Vanessa entered without permission, because boundaries, like humility, had apparently been deleted from her operating system. Nathan stood behind her, jaw tight. Samuel, Vanessa said, all polished urgency. We need to control the announcement. If this donor is anonymous, we can still shape the story around surgical excellence. Nathan's team is the obvious face of the campaign. Nathan stepped inside, eyes moving from Dr. Hayes to Claire. Why is she here? The question was not loud, but it landed with the old weight. She, not Claire, not Ms. Whitmore, just a pronoun used like a broom to sweep her back into the corner where he believed she belonged. Dr. Hayes closed the folder slowly. Claire works with development. Nathan's laugh was short. She has been here one day. Vanessa's gaze dropped to the documents on the desk. Is that the donor file? Dr. Hayes covered the top page with one hand. It is confidential. Nathan looked at Claire again, and for the first time since she had returned, there was something beneath his arrogance that almost resembled unease. Did you know about this? Claire met his eyes. I know Emily Parker needs surgery. That is not what I asked. It is the only part that matters. Silence settled over the office, clean and cold. Then a nurse knocked on the open door, breathless from the hallway but composed. Dr. Caldwell, Pediatric cardiology just called. Emily Parker has been cleared financially. They are asking whether you can review the surgical schedule today. Nathan blinked, caught between professional duty and personal suspicion. Vanessa looked annoyed, which said plenty about her priorities and absolutely nothing flattering. Claire stood. "Excuse me," she said softly, and walked past them into the hall. Behind her, Nathan's voice followed, lower now. "Claire." She stopped but did not turn. "Not everything is about you, Nathan." Then she continued toward the pediatric wing, where a little girl with a pink backpack was about to be told that someone she had never met had moved the world quietly enough for hope to enter the room. Claire reached the pediatric wing just as Dana Parker was being handed a fresh folder by the billing coordinator, the same woman whose voice the day before had sounded like a door closing softly. Now that voice had changed. It had lifted, warmed, almost trembled with the relief of someone allowed to deliver good news for once, a rare event in hospital administration, where hope usually has to fill out 3 forms and wait for approval. Dana stared down at the papers, then back up, her eyes glassy and confused. "I do not understand," she said. "It says the surgery is covered." The coordinator nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Parker. The full procedure, recovery care, medication support, and follow-up therapy have been approved through a new charitable fund." Dana pressed one hand against her mouth. Her other hand held Emily's backpack strap as if the little pink bag were the only thing keeping her upright. "But who did this?" The donor asked to remain anonymous. Claire stopped a few feet away, close enough to hear, far enough to let the moment belong to them. Emily sat in the recliner by the window with a blanket over her legs and a stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Her face was tired, but her eyes were awake, sharp with the instinct children develop when adults try too hard to sound cheerful. "Mom," Emily whispered, "does that mean I can have the operation?" Dana turned toward her daughter, and the answer broke through her before the words did. She nodded, crying now, but smiling too, which made her look younger and older at the same time. "Yes, baby. It means you can have it." Emily looked past her mother and saw Claire near the doorway. "The paperwork moved fast," she said. Claire walked in slowly, carrying a paperback book she had brought from home. "Sometimes it does." "Is that the dragon book?" "It is. I thought the machines might still be annoying." Emily smiled, and Dana glanced between them, trying to place Claire inside this impossible turn of fortune. "You work upstairs, right?" she asked. "Development." "For now," Claire said. "Then maybe you know who donated the money." Claire set the book gently on the side table. "I know they wanted Emily to get well." Dana searched her face, but Claire had spent years learning how to keep her expression calm, while wealthy people underestimated her, doctors dismissed her, and Nathan spoke over her at dinner tables as if volume were a medical credential. Secrets, she had discovered, were easier to hold when they were rooted in love instead of shame. Before Dana could ask anything else, Nathan entered with 2 residents behind him, wearing his white coat like armor and his reputation like a second spine. His professional mask was firmly in place now, the charming, focused surgeon every parent wanted to believe in. "Good afternoon, Emily," he said, voice gentle enough to remind Claire why people trusted him with their children's hearts even when he had been careless with hers. "I hear we have some good news." Emily hugged her rabbit tighter. "Someone paid for my surgery. Someone made sure you could receive the care you need," Nathan said. "And my team and I are going to do everything we can to help you." He explained the procedure in simple terms, using words Dana could understand without making her feel small, and Claire watched the contradiction of him with the old ache of recognition. Nathan could be brilliant. Nathan could be kind when kindness served the role he wanted to play. That had been part of what made leaving him so hard, because villains in real life rarely arrive wearing labels. They hold doors, save patients, remember birthdays, and still manage to make one person feel invisible in every room that matters. When the residents stepped out, Nathan lingered by the window. His gaze moved to the book on the side table, then to Claire. "You seem very invested in this case." Emily likes stories. "That is not what I meant." "I know." Dana looked between them, sensing a history but too exhausted to hold another person's tension. "Dr. Caldwell, when would the surgery be?" "If her labs remain stable, within 48 hours." Dana inhaled sharply. Emily's eyes widened. Claire placed a steady hand on the back of the recliner, not touching the child, just close enough to be there. 48 hours is fast, Dana said. It needs to be, Nathan replied. And now that funding is no longer delaying us, there is no medical reason to wait. The word funding changed the room. It moved through the air like a second heartbeat. Nathan heard it too, because his eyes returned to Claire, narrowing slightly. Somewhere behind his expression, a thought was forming, one his pride disliked too much to let fully live. Claire, he said, can I speak with you outside? She followed him into the hall, where painted clouds floated uselessly above the nurse's station. He kept his voice low. Samuel was acting strange this morning. Vanessa saw donor documents in his office. Then Emily's case is suddenly funded after you spent 1 day in development. Claire looked at him calmly. Hospitals receive donations. Not $12 million from nowhere. Maybe it was not from nowhere. Maybe someone was paying attention. His jaw tightened. Do not play games with me. I stopped playing games with you 5 years ago. For a moment, the old Nathan flashed through, the man who disliked any sentence he could not control. Then a nurse called his name from the medication room, and he had to step back into the version of himself. The hospital admired. Claire watched him go, feeling not triumph, not bitterness, but a quiet, steady distance. At the end of the hall, Grace Miller, the pediatric charge nurse, stood with a chart in her arms, watching Claire with thoughtful eyes. You are not just temporary staff, are you? Grace asked softly. Claire turned toward Emily's room, where Dana was reading the first page of the Dragon book aloud. Today, she said, I am just someone who wanted that little girl to have a chance. Grace did not press further. Some people still understood that not every act of goodness needed to be dragged into daylight immediately, a miracle nearly as rare as a hospital printer working on the first try. The 48 hours before Emily Parker's surgery seemed to stretch and shrink at the same time, the way hospital time always did, turning minutes into small eternities and whole afternoons into missing pages. Claire spent most of that first day moving between the development office and the pediatric wing, carrying folders, answering donor calls, and pretending not to notice how often Nathan appeared wherever she happened to be. He passed her near the elevators at 10:30, paused outside Dr. Hayes' office at noon, and stood at the nurse's station at 4 o'clock with a chart in his hand and suspicion sitting behind his eyes like a guest who had not been invited but refused to leave. Vanessa noticed too, because Vanessa noticed anything that threatened to shift attention away from her carefully arranged universe. By late afternoon, she had summoned Claire into the small conference room beside the gala storage closet, where boxes of linen napkins, auction paddles, and fake gold centerpieces waited to convince wealthy people that generosity needed mood lighting. I want to clarify roles before this gets messy, Vanessa said, closing the door. Her voice was smooth, but the smile had left her face. Usually means the donor does not want messaging. Anonymous means we do not use a name. It does not mean we waste a narrative. Vanessa tapped her tablet. The board wants momentum. Nathan's surgical team will be featured. Dr. Hayes will make a statement. We will position the gift as confidence in St. Mercy's medical leadership. Claire looked at her. And Emily? Vanessa's expression flickered. Emily can be mentioned tastefully. We cannot make one child the whole story. She is the reason the fund was activated immediately. You do not know that. Claire said nothing, which was apparently enough to make Vanessa lean forward. Do you? The room went very still. From the hallway came the muffled squeak of a cartwheel, and Molly laughing nervously at something near the printer. Poor machine probably fighting for its life like every other office device humans insist is essential. Claire folded her hands. I know the donor asked for children without adequate insurance to receive care based on medical need. Vanessa studied her, eyes narrowing. You speak as if you have read the agreement. I work in development. You started yesterday. Then I am learning quickly. Vanessa gave a soft laugh without humor. Nathan said you were always like this. Quiet. Hard to read. Making people feel guilty without saying anything. Claire absorbed the sentence without letting it reach the place where old words still had teeth. Nathan often mistook silence for emptiness. Vanessa's mouth tightened. Be careful, Claire. This hospital is not some charity scrapbook where good intentions make you important. There are reputations here. Careers. Relationships with donors that took years to build. And patience, Claire said. There are patients here too. For a moment Vanessa looked almost offended, as if Claire had brought up illness in a hospital just to be rude. Then her tablet buzzed. saving them both from the disaster of honesty. She glanced at the screen and stood. The board is meeting at 6. Please make sure the gala seating chart is finished. Put yourself at the staff table in the back. That the insult had not landed loudly enough. After she left, Claire remained in the conference room for several seconds, looking at the fake gold centerpieces. They were lightweight plastic, painted to resemble something valuable. She wondered how many people in Nathan's world were made from the same material. That evening, she returned to pediatrics and found Emily drawing in bed while Dana dozed in the chair beside her, exhaustion finally pulling the mother under. The room was dim except for the soft lamp near the window and the green pulse of the monitor. Emily held up her page. "It is a Dragon Hospital," she whispered. Claire arrived before sunrise, when the lobby lights still felt too bright, and the cleaning staff moved through the marble entrance with quiet authority, the only people in the building who seemed to understand that institutions were held together by invisible labor. She carried Emily's drawing inside a folder, tucked between donor reports and revised gala notes, careful not to bend the wingless angel with the red heart. In the development office, Molly had taped a sticky note to Claire's monitor that read, "Board meeting moved to 9. Vanessa is spiraling. Good luck to humanity." Claire allowed herself one real smile before opening the latest email chain. Vanessa had already drafted a press statement that mentioned Dr. Nathan Caldwell 3 times, surgical excellence 4 times, and Emily Parker exactly once, which was a stunning achievement in the field of missing the point while using complete sentences. Claire edited it quietly, shifting the language toward the pediatric unit, the families, the nurses, and the new fund's mission. She removed every phrase that turned generosity into a billboard. At 8:40 a.m., Dr. Hayes called her to his office. He stood by the window with a paper cup of coffee untouched on his desk, looking older than he had the day before. "The board wants to meet the donor," he said. Claire set her folder on the chair, but did not sit. "That was not part of the agreement. I told them that. And they are wealthy, impatient, and allergic to being told no. So naturally they believe no is an invitation to push harder." Claire looked out toward the courtyard, where the chapel windows caught the first clean line of morning light. "Then tell them the donor will withdraw public participation, not funding, if they keep pressing." Dr. Hayes turned from the window. "You are protecting more than your privacy." It was not a question. Claire breathed in slowly. The office smelled of coffee, paper, and lilies, and suddenly she was back in another room 5 years earlier, sitting across from Nathan at their kitchen island while he explained the divorce as if it were a scheduling conflict. He had said they had grown in different directions. He had said she seemed happier in smaller rooms. He had said Vanessa understood the demands of his life. What he meant was simpler and uglier. Claire no longer made him look the way he wanted to be seen. After the divorce, she had disappeared from St. Mercy's social world so completely that some people had spoken of her as if she had chosen failure as a hobby. What no one knew, not Nathan, not Vanessa, not the board members who loved charity as long as it came with engraved plaques, was that Claire's grandmother had left her controlling interest in the Whitmore Legacy Foundation, a quiet family fund built from medical equipment patents and old investments. Claire had spent 5 years learning what power looked like when it did not need applause. "I am protecting the purpose," she said. "If my name comes out too early, the story becomes Nathan's ex-wife. It becomes gossip. It becomes a room full of people asking why I did not tell him, whether I wanted revenge, whether I am bitter, whether I planned this to embarrass him. A child is having heart surgery tomorrow. That should be the story." Dr. Hayes nodded, and for once his eyes were not administrative. They were human. "I wish more donors thought like you. Most people do not get rich by being spiritually convenient." He gave a short laugh, then handed her a slim folder. "There is something else. The first transfer included authorization initials only. CW. The finance office has seen them. Grace Miller asked me directly whether you were connected to the fund." Claire closed her eyes briefly. Grace was too observant, Nathan was too suspicious, and Vanessa was too ambitious. The secret was no longer sealed. It was breathing under the door. "What did you tell her?" "That the donor's identity was confidential." "And Nathan?" "He asked accounting for donor verification access." Claire opened her eyes. "He cannot have it. He will not." At that moment, her phone buzzed with a message from Dana Parker. Emily wanted to know if the secret person liked dragons. Claire looked down at the screen, and the tightness in her chest eased. Tell the board whatever you need to tell them, she said. But until Emily wakes up after surgery, my name stays out of the light. Downstairs, Nathan stood outside the pediatric operating schedule board, staring at Emily's case file with the expression of a man trying to solve a puzzle that offended him personally. Vanessa approached with her tablet pressed to her chest. The press release is being revised, she said. Claire changed it. Nathan's gaze did not leave the file. Claire seems to be changing a lot of things. Do you think she knows the donor? Nathan finally looked at her. I think she knows more than she should. In the pediatric wing, Claire entered Emily's room and found the little girl sitting upright, pale but alert, her stuffed rabbit dressed in a tiny hospital bracelet made from tape. Did you ask them? Emily whispered. About the dragons? Claire sat beside her. The secret person thinks dragons are excellent, especially stubborn ones with very big hearts. Emily smiled. Then they can have the drawing. Claire touched the folder in her lap. I will make sure they do. And in that quiet room, while powerful adults chased credit through polished hallways, Claire stayed beside a child who needed courage more than headlines, knowing the truth was coming, but not yet, not before hope had done its work. The morning of Emily Parker's surgery arrived under a hard white sky, the kind that made the hospital windows look washed clean and merciless. Claire came in at 5:50 a.m., long before the lobby filled with visitors and the gift shop opened its cheerful little battlefield of balloons, stuffed animals, and overpriced sympathy cards. St. Mercy was quieter at that hour, but not peaceful. Hospitals never truly slept. They only lowered their voices. In pediatrics, Dana sat beside Emily's bed wearing yesterday's sweater and the stunned expression of a woman who had prayed for help and was still suspicious of receiving it. Emily was awake, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, a blue surgical cap resting beside her like a strange little hat from a game nobody wanted to play. Claire stepped into the room softly. You are early, Emily whispered. So are you. I could not sleep. That makes two of us. Dana rose and hugged Claire, before either of them could decide whether it was appropriate. The embrace was brief, trembling, and filled with all the words exhausted mothers do not have time to organize. Thank you for being here, Dana said. Claire held her carefully. You do not have to do this morning alone. Emily held out the dragon drawing from the day before, now folded once in the middle. I made another one, she said. This one is for after. Claire took it. The new drawing showed a hospital with a red door, dragons flying above it, and a small figure standing beside a girl in a bed. The figure had no wings, only a pen. Children, unlike adults, had a very inconvenient habit of seeing the truth without waiting for a press release. Before Claire could speak, Nathan entered with Grace Miller and two surgical nurses. His face carried the calm focus of a man stepping into the one place where his talent was undeniable. Whatever else Nathan had failed to be, he was a surgeon, and that morning Claire found no satisfaction in remembering his flaws. A child needed him. That was enough. He explained the final steps to Dana, reviewed the timing, and crouched slightly so he could speak to Emily at eye level. We are going to take very good care of you, he said. Emily studied him. Will it hurt? You will be asleep the whole time. When you wake up, your mom will be there. And Claire? Nathan's eyes lifted for a fraction of a second. Claire saw the question land in him, small but sharp. If your mother says it is all right, he said. Dana nodded quickly. Please. Emily seemed satisfied, then held out her stuffed rabbit. Can he wait with my mom? Grace accepted it like a sacred object. Absolutely. The team began to prepare her for transport. Dana kissed Emily's forehead twice, then once more, because letting go is apparently a skill human hearts refuse to master efficiently. Claire stood beside her as the bed rolled into the hallway. Emily waved with two fingers. Tell the secret person not to worry, she called softly. I am trying to be brave. Claire's throat tightened. I will tell them. Nathan heard it. Grace heard it. Vanessa, arriving at the nurse's station with a tablet and a cup of coffee she did not need, heard it too. Her eyes moved from Emily to Claire, then to Nathan. The hallway held its breath for one quiet second before the elevator doors opened and Emily disappeared towards surgery. Dana sank into the nearest chair, and Claire sat beside her, one hand resting over the folded drawing in her lap. Hours began. First one, then two, then three. Surgical waiting rooms were designed by people who had clearly studied anxiety and decided it needed beige chairs, vending machines, and a television permanently tuned to weather reports nobody absorbed. Dana checked her phone every few minutes. Claire brought her coffee she barely drank and crackers she only held. Dr. Hayes came once, stood with them, and left after telling Dana that the team was progressing as expected. Vanessa passed through twice with board members, her voice lowered into the respectful tone people use around suffering when they are afraid it might stain their shoes. Near noon, Nathan's resident appeared with an update. Everything is stable. Dr. Caldwell is still working. He wanted you to know she is doing well. Dana started crying silently, the kind of crying that seemed less like breaking and more like pressure finally escaping. Claire squeezed her hand. Across the waiting room, Grace Miller watched from the doorway, her gaze flicking to the folder beside Claire, where the corner of Emily's drawing showed the initials CW written in a child's uneven purple marker. Grace said nothing. Good nurses knew when silence was medicine. At 1:37 p.m., the double doors opened, and Nathan walked out in fresh scrubs, tired lines at the corners of his eyes, his cap in one hand. Dana stood so fast her knees nearly gave way. Claire rose with her. Nathan looked at Dana first, as he should have. Emily did very well, he said. The repair was successful. She is stable, and we are moving her to recovery. Dana covered her face and sobbed, not from fear this time, but from the violent relief of being handed her child back by the universe after preparing to bargain with it forever. Claire closed her eyes. For one moment, no board, no gala, no anonymous fund, no Nathan, no Vanessa existed. Only a little girl with a stubborn dragon heart and another chance. Then Nathan turned to Claire. His expression had changed. It was not suspicion now. It was something heavier, almost unwilling. The authorization code on the emergency funding, he said quietly, so Dana would not hear. CW. Claire looked at him steadily. Emily is alive, Nathan. He swallowed. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you should need today. And because even then he could not help himself, because pride has the survival instincts of a cockroach in formal wear, he asked, "Who are you now, Claire?" She folded Emily's drawing and held it against her chest. Someone you should have recognized a long time ago. Then she turned back to Dana, leaving Nathan standing in the waiting room with the first real crack in the story he had told himself about her. The first 24 hours after surgery turned St. Mercy into a place of waiting again, but this time the waiting had changed shape. It no longer crouched in corners with fear. It sat upright beside recovery monitors, counting every steady beep like proof that the world had not completely lost its mind, though the evidence remained annoyingly mixed. Emily slept through most of the afternoon, small beneath the pale blue blanket, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, and a clear tube taped gently near her hand. Dana sat on the edge of the chair beside her, afraid to look away for more than a few seconds, as if love itself were keeping the machines honest. Claire stayed for an hour, then another, then told herself she needed to return upstairs before people started asking questions she was not ready to answer. Grace Miller stopped her outside the recovery room, holding a chart against her chest. "She is doing well," Grace said softly. "Better than expected." Claire nodded, feeling the words settle somewhere deep. "Good." Grace looked toward the room, then back at Claire. "You know, I have worked here 19 years. I have watched owners put their names on walls for checks smaller than the cost of one operating room light. I have watched families sell cars, wedding rings, and dignity to buy time. And now a fund appears. Anonymous, precise, with conditions written by someone who understands where hospitals fail people." Claire kept her gaze on the recovery room window. "That sounds like a generous person. It sounds like someone who has been invisible long enough to notice everyone else who is invisible." The sentence found its mark, quiet and clean. Claire turned to Grace, and for a moment neither woman performed ignorance for the comfort of the hallway. Grace did not smile. She simply reached into her scrub pocket and handed Claire a folded note. "Emily asked me to give you this when she woke up for a minute. She said it was for the secret person, but she also said you would know where to send it. Children are subtle like fire alarms." Claire unfolded the paper. In uneven purple marker, Emily had written, "Thank you for fixing the money problem so Dr. Caldwell could fix my heart." Claire pressed her thumb lightly against the words. "She should be resting. She is. Bossy little thing, though. Excellent sign." Claire laughed once, very softly, and the sound felt unfamiliar in her chest. Downstairs, however, The adult world had already begun doing what it did best, taking something pure and wrapping it in strategy until it suffocated politely. By the time Claire returned to the development office, the board had requested an emergency communications meeting. Vanessa had arranged pastries, projection slides, and a seating chart that placed Claire along the wall near the extra coffee urn, because humiliation, like office supplies, apparently came in bulk. Nathan stood near the front with Dr. Hayes, arms crossed, face composed but distracted. He had operated for hours, saved Emily's life, and still looked as if one unanswered question had burrowed beneath his skin. Vanessa began with a smile bright enough to require liability insurance. Emily Parker's successful procedure gives us a powerful opportunity to frame the anonymous donation as a vote of confidence in St. Mercy's leadership. The gala is in 3 nights. We should announce the fund publicly, celebrate the surgical team, and invite the donor to step forward if they wish. A board member in a charcoal suit nodded. Can we pressure them privately? Dr. Hayes looked at him over his glasses. That is a remarkable sentence to say out loud in a hospital. A few people shifted. Claire kept her eyes down, though inwardly she gave Samuel Hayes a small, civilized round of applause. Nathan spoke next. The donor's identity matters less than how the fund is used. Emily's case proved the impact. We should focus on expanding access. Vanessa turned toward him, surprised. Naturally, but the public will want a face. The public wants a story, Nathan said. A face is not always necessary. His eyes moved briefly to Claire. Not long. Long enough. Vanessa saw it, and something in her expression sharpened. Claire, she said suddenly, drawing every eye toward the wall. You edited the release. Since you seem to have strong feelings about the donor's intent, maybe you can explain what you think the message should be. The room became still. It was the kind of invitation designed to look professional while carrying a small blade under its tongue. Claire stood slowly, holding Emily's note inside her folder. She could have said nothing. She could have played small, as Nathan once trained her to do by praising her softness whenever it made his life easier. Instead, she looked at the board, at Vanessa, at Nathan, and finally at Dr. Hayes. The message should be that St. Mercy was given a chance to remember why it exists, she said. Not to polish reputations. Not to turn a sick child into a slogan. Not to chase applause from people who confuse generosity with visibility. A little girl is alive because money stopped standing between her and care. That should humble everyone in this room. Silence followed, dense and absolute. Vanessa's face flushed beneath its careful makeup. Nathan stared at Claire as if hearing, perhaps for the first time, the full size of a voice he had spent years mistaking for quiet. Dr. Hayes closed his folder. Then that is our message, he said. And just like that, in a room full of expensive suits and fragile egos, Claire Whitmore remained unnamed, but no longer unseen. By evening, Claire's words in the boardroom had traveled through St. Mercy faster than any official announcement, which was impressive considering hospital gossip already moved at the speed of a billing error. By the time she returned to her desk, Molly was pretending not to stare at her and failing with the tragic commitment of someone who had never been good at secrets. So, Molly said, dragging the word across the office like a chair across tile, you made 3 board members look personally ashamed of capitalism. Claire set her folder down. I answered a question. That was not an answer. That was a public service. Claire sat, opened the gala spreadsheet, and tried to focus on table assignments. But the room felt different around her now. Not friendly exactly. More awake. People who had passed her without seeing her now looked twice. The receptionist who had sent her to elevator B with all the warmth of a parking ticket nodded when Claire walked by. A junior accountant held the door for her and said, nice remarks in there. Even the printer worked on the first try, which Molly called deeply suspicious and possibly supernatural. Claire should have felt satisfied. Instead, she felt the old instinct to shrink back, to lower her voice before someone accused her of taking up too much space. That had been Nathan's quietest lesson, and therefore his most effective one. He had never needed to yell to make her smaller. He had simply praised her when she disappeared correctly. By 6:30, Dr. Hayes asked Claire to bring the revised gala program to his office. She found him standing beside a display board covered with photos from the pediatric unit, including one of Emily asleep in recovery, cheeks pale but peaceful, Dana's hand resting beside hers. The photograph had not been staged. That was why it mattered. Emily's mother gave permission, Dr. Hayes said. Only for the gala. No press distribution without further consent. Claire nodded. Good. He handed her the program proof. I made one change. Claire looked down. Near the final page, beneath the section announcing the new Pediatric Access Initiative, the fund was listed simply as the Angel Fund, established by an anonymous benefactor. No initials. No hint. No trail. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet, Dr. Hayes replied. The board approved a recognition moment at the gala. They will not name you, but they do want me to invite the donor to stand if present. Claire's fingers tightened on the paper. That is pressure dressed as gratitude. Yes, humans have made an entire civilization out of that costume. She looked toward the window, where the city lights had begun to appear, small and indifferent. I will attend as staff. Claire. His voice softened. You are allowed to be more than staff. She smiled faintly. I know. That is why I do not need them to know yet. When she stepped into the hallway, Nathan was waiting near the framed portraits of past hospital presidents, his tie loosened, his face tired in a way surgery alone did not explain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The corridor between them seemed crowded with every old dinner party, every corrected sentence, every time he had introduced her as my wife, in a tone that sounded less like love and more like ownership. Emily is stable, he said. She woke up for a few minutes. Asked whether dragons can have physical therapy. Claire's face softened despite herself. They probably need a specialist. She liked having you there. She is easy to care about. Nathan looked down, then back at her. You were good with her. Claire waited. Compliments from Nathan had always been doors with locks on the outside. I mean it, he added. I do not think I ever noticed how you were with people who were scared. You made them feel less alone. The admission landed awkwardly, late and bruised, but not worthless. That was inconvenient. Claire had expected suspicion, accusation, maybe even resentment. Regret was harder. Regret tried to put furniture in rooms she had already emptied. You noticed when it helped you, she said quietly. He flinched, not dramatically, just enough to prove the words had reached him. That is fair. It is also not the worst thing you did. He looked at her then, really looked, and the hallway seemed to lose some of its polished noise. Were you connected to the donation? Claire held his gaze. She could feel the truth moving closer, not like a storm, but like dawn. Impossible to stop once it had decided to arrive. Emily is alive, she said. The unit stays open. Families will get help before they are ruined by paperwork. Let that be enough until the gala. Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly. Why until the gala? She did not answer. From behind them came the click of heels. Vanessa stood at the far end of the hall, tablet in hand, watching with a stillness that made her look less polished now and more calculating. Claire saw the exact moment Vanessa understood that there was a secret, and worse, that she was not inside it. Dr. Caldwell. Vanessa called, her smile returning like a curtain being pulled over broken glass. The board chair needs you. Nathan did not move at first. Then he stepped back. This is not over, Claire. No, she said, looking past him toward the pediatric wing, where Emily's monitor kept its steady rhythm. But it is no longer yours to control. The night before the gala, St. Mercy behaved like a hospital that had temporarily forgotten it was a hospital, which was how charity events always seemed to work in America. Cover the hard truths with flowers, feed wealthy people salmon, and hope compassion survives the catering invoice. The main atrium had been transformed beneath a canopy of soft white lights, with round tables dressed in navy linens, gold-rimmed plates, and centerpieces tall enough to block sincere conversation, which was probably a mercy. Staff moved between ladders, sound checks, and crates of programs, while the pediatric wing continued its quieter rhythm 3 floors away, where Emily Parker was awake, asking for orange gelatin and complaining that recovery was boring. Claire spent the afternoon correcting name cards and moving donors away from people they had sued, divorced, or publicly insulted at previous galas, a task so delicate it should have come with a diplomatic passport. Molly sat beside her at the registration table, sorting envelopes. Do rich people always need this much management? She asked. Claire placed a board member's wife at table 4 instead of table 5. Only when they are awake. Molly snorted, then lowered her voice. Vanessa has changed the program. Twice. She added a tribute slide for Dr. Caldwell's surgical team. Emily's surgery deserves recognition. This is less recognition and more Nathan and flattering lighting. Claire looked across the atrium. Vanessa stood near the stage with a headset clipped to her blazer, speaking to the audiovisual technician as if the fate of democracy depended on the font size. Nathan was beside her, but his attention was not on the slide deck. He kept looking toward the registration table, toward Claire, toward the locked donor display where the new pediatric fund would be announced. He had asked no more direct questions since the hallway, but suspicion had settled over him like a weather system. Near 5 o'clock, Dr. Hayes approached Claire with a sealed envelope in his hand. "The final remarks," he said. "I included the language you requested." Claire took the envelope. No naming. No pressure. No pressure. His mouth tightened slightly. There is one complication. Naturally, Claire thought. The universe adored timing its complications for maximum theatrical inconvenience. What kind? The board chair wants the donor recognition moved earlier in the program, before dinner, while press photographers are still present. Claire's expression did not change, but something in her went still. That violates the agreement. I told him that. He called it symbolic. People call things symbolic when they want permission to ignore the plain meaning. Dr. Hayes nodded. I agree. I refused. Claire let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Vanessa is upset. She believes the donor's anonymity is limiting media value. Claire looked toward the stage, where Vanessa was now watching them. Vanessa believes Oxygen should issue a press release if it enters the room. Dr. Hayes almost smiled. Emily will be moved to step-down care tomorrow morning if all goes well. Dana asked whether she could attend the gala briefly by video, just to thank the hospital. Claire's face softened. Only if Emily wants that. She does. She also asked whether the secret person would hear her. Claire looked down at the sealed envelope in her hand. Yes, she said. They will hear her. Later, as the atrium emptied and the final staff meeting broke apart, Claire walked alone to the chapel courtyard. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint smell of rain against the city pavement. Through the glass wall behind her, she could see Nathan approach before he spoke. His reflection appeared beside hers, older than the man she had married, less certain than the man who had left. I checked the foundation registry, he said. Claire kept her gaze on the dark chapel windows. That sounds like something you would do. The CW Angel Fund was incorporated through Whitmore Legacy Foundation. Her silence answered too much. He took a slow breath. Your grandmother's foundation. She believed hospitals should heal people before bankrupting them. You control it now. Claire turned then. Yes. The word was small, but it landed harder than any speech. Nathan looked genuinely shaken, not because money impressed him, though it did, but because he was rearranging years of contempt in real time and discovering the shelves had been mislabeled. You let me think you had nothing after the divorce. Claire's laugh was quiet, almost sad. I did have nothing, Nathan. Nothing that mattered to the people you wanted to impress. No title you respected. No room you thought I belonged in. No voice you cared to hear. Why hide it? Because I wanted to know what I could build without becoming another plaque on a wall. He looked toward the atrium, where Vanessa's silhouette moved behind the glass. Tomorrow they are going to find out. Only if I choose that. Vanessa will keep digging. Let her. His eyes returned to hers. Claire, if this comes out in front of everyone, it will humiliate her. It will humiliate me. There it was, finally. Not Emily. Not the fund. Not the children who would be treated because of it. Him. Still somehow him. Claire's voice remained calm. I did not donate $12 million to embarrass you. But it will. Then maybe the embarrassment belongs to the person who spent years mistaking kindness for weakness. Nathan looked away. For the first time, he had no polished answer. Claire stepped past him, toward the hospital doors, carrying the final program under one arm. Behind her, the atrium lights glowed like a stage waiting for its actors, but Claire knew something Vanessa and Nathan had not yet understood. The next night would not be about performance. It would be about truth deciding, at last, that it had waited politely long enough. The gala began with the soft clink of crystal, the warm glow of rented lights, and the practiced laughter of people who knew exactly how generous they looked from the right angle. By 7 o'clock, St. Mercy's atrium no longer smelled like disinfectant and coffee. It smelled like white roses, lemon butter sauce, expensive perfume, and the faint panic of staff members trying to keep donors happy without letting them wander into places where actual medicine was happening. Claire stood behind the registration table in a simple navy dress and low heels, her hair pinned back, a staff badge clipped discreetly near her waist. She looked polished but unremarkable, which was precisely the point. Around her, guests in dark suits and satin gowns moved through the room with champagne glasses and sympathetic expressions, pausing before photographs of children they did not know, murmuring about hope, then checking whether their table was close enough to the stage. Molly handed out name cards beside her, wearing the haunted expression of a person who had just discovered that philanthropy required alphabetical order. Mrs. Landon says she refuses to sit near Mr. Pierce because he beat her husband in a golf tournament in 2019, Molly whispered. Civilization was a mistake, Claire said quietly, sliding another envelope across the table. Molly smiled, then stiffened as Vanessa approached. Vanessa wore a cream suit with gold buttons, elegant enough to look effortless and expensive enough to prove it was not. Her smile was bright, but her eyes were searching. Claire, she said, glancing at the guest list. The staff table has been moved farther back. We needed more space for board guests. That is fine. Also, Dr. Hayes may invite the anonymous donor to stand during the recognition moment. Purely optional, naturally. Claire looked up. The agreement said no pressure. Vanessa's smile did not move. A gracious invitation is not pressure. It is when someone has already said no. Vanessa leaned closer, lowering her voice until it became almost pleasant. You know, I could not understand why you cared so much. Then I thought about it. The initials. The timing. The way Samuel looks at you like you are not just another temporary employee. It is you, is it not? Claire held her gaze. The evening is not about me. That sounds almost noble. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Or convenient. Sometimes those are different things. Before Vanessa could answer, applause rose near the entrance. Nathan had arrived, dressed in a black suit, his mother on one side and two board members on the other. The room bent toward him with admiration. He accepted it gracefully, but his eyes found Claire across the atrium almost immediately. There was no triumph in his face now, no easy arrogance, only uncertainty, and something that might have been shame if it survived long enough to earn the name. Vanessa noticed the look and stepped back from Claire as if proximity had become dangerous. Dinner moved forward with the usual speeches. A board chair spoke about vision. A donor spoke about legacy. Someone used the phrase community impact twice in one sentence, which should have required medical evaluation. Claire remained at the back, checking the program schedule while listening for the moment that mattered. At last, Dr. Hayes took the stage. The room quieted. Behind him, the large screen shifted from the St. Mercy logo to a photograph of Emily Parker sitting in her hospital bed, pale but smiling, holding her stuffed rabbit and giving a tiny thumbs up. A soft sound moved through the audience. Not applause yet. Something more honest. Dr. Hayes adjusted the microphone. 3 days ago, a child in our care was waiting for a surgery her family could not afford and our hospital was struggling to support. Tonight, that child is recovering. She is not a symbol. She is not a campaign. She is a little girl who likes dragon stories and orange gelatin, and she is alive because someone chose compassion without asking for recognition. Claire felt the room tilt quietly around those words. On the screen, a video window opened. Dana appeared beside Emily's bed, tired and glowing, while Emily waved weakly at the camera. Thank you, Emily said, her small voice filling the atrium. To the doctors and the nurses and the secret person who fixed the money problem so my heart could get fixed. Laughter broke softly through the room, followed by tears, though many guests pretended to dab their eyes in a very dignified manner, because heaven forbid sincerity appear without choreography. Emily held up the drawing of the wingless angel with a pen and a red heart. This is for you. Claire's hand tightened around the edge of the registration table. Nathan turned slowly in his chair, looking back at her. Vanessa turned too. Then Dr. Hayes continued, his voice steady but thick with emotion. The donor asked to remain anonymous until the first child helped by this fund was safe. That condition has been met. The donor has also given permission for one truth to be shared tonight, not for applause, But so every family who walks through this hospital knows that someone saw them before the world did. Claire's breath stopped. She had not expected that phrasing. She had given permission for the foundation to be named, not herself, not yet. But Dr. Hayes looked toward the back of the room with such quiet respect that she understood he was offering her a door, not pushing her through it. The screen changed. White letters appeared against a navy background. The C.W. Angel Fund, established through Whitmore Legacy Foundation. A murmur swept the atrium. Nathan stood halfway, without seeming to realize it. Vanessa's face drained of color as the initials became a fact no one could decorate into something else. Dr. Hayes looked directly at Claire. Ms. Claire Whitmore, on behalf of St. Mercy Medical Center, and on behalf of the children whose names we do not yet know, thank you. For one impossible second, no one moved. Then Grace Miller began clapping from the side of the stage. Molly followed. Dana clapped through the video screen. The sound spread, table by table, until the atrium rose to its feet. Claire remained, still at the back, exposed beneath 1,000 eyes. Not as Nathan's ex-wife, not as temporary staff, not as the quiet woman people had mistaken for small, but as the person who had changed the room without ever needing to own it. Nathan stared at her with his hand resting against the back of his chair, speechless at last, which was perhaps the healthiest condition his ego had experienced in years. The applause lasted longer than Claire expected, which made standing still harder than any insult Nathan had ever placed carefully in front of witnesses. She had learned how to endure cruelty. Praise was less familiar, and therefore more suspicious, like a hospital vending machine offering fresh fruit without asking for a credit card. Faces turned toward her from every table, some stunned, some moved, some recalculating old assumptions with the visible discomfort of people realizing they had been rude to someone richer than they were. Vanessa remained beside the stage, frozen beneath the gold lights, her perfect smile gone thin and colorless. Nathan stood near the front table with one hand on the chair back, staring at Claire as if a door had opened in the wall of his life and revealed an entire house he had never bothered to enter. Dr. Hayes waited until the applause softened, then stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. He did not hurry. He did not perform. When he reached Claire, he held out Emily's drawing, now placed carefully in a simple white frame. The wingless angel with the pin and red heart looked almost comical beneath the chandeliers, which was exactly why it was the most honest thing in the room. She wanted you to have this, he said quietly. Claire accepted it with both hands. Thank you. Dr. Hayes leaned closer, lowering his voice. You did not have to let me say your name. Claire looked toward the video screen, where Dana was wiping her eyes while Emily waved weakly from her hospital bed. No, she said. But she should know that people who help are real. The room began to move again around them, guests speaking in lowered voices, board members approaching with expressions of reverence polished by sudden self-interest. Claire accepted their thanks politely, but she gave them no extra pieces of herself. When one man asked whether the foundation might consider naming rights for the pediatric wing, Claire looked at him for 2 calm seconds and said, "The children can have their own names." He laughed awkwardly, because apparently dignity still startled people when it appeared without a donor packet. Vanessa approached next, holding her tablet like a shield. "Claire," she said, voice tight but controlled. "I owe you an apology. I did not know." Claire turned to her. "That was never the problem." Vanessa blinked. "What does that mean?" "You did not need to know I had money to treat me with respect." The words were quiet, but Vanessa heard them. So did Molly, who stood behind the registration table with her mouth slightly open, looking like she had just watched customer service become a moral weapon. Vanessa's eyes dropped first. "You are right," she said. It was small, reluctant, and probably the best she could manage without professional assistance. Claire nodded once and let her go. Nathan waited until the crowd thinned, until Dr. Hayes returned to the stage, until the musicians resumed playing something soft enough to make even wealthy guilt feel elegant. He found Claire near the chapel courtyard doors, where she stood with Emily's framed drawing held against her side. For a moment, he looked less like the brilliant surgeon everyone admired and more like the man she had once loved before ambition taught him to confuse love with usefulness. "Claire," he said, "I am sorry." She watched him carefully. Years earlier, those words would have broken her open. She would have searched them for proof that the past could be repaired, that pain could be refunded, that a marriage could become kind again if someone finally said the right sentence. Now the words only stood between them, late but not meaningless. For what? She asked. Nathan swallowed. For making you feel small. For not seeing what you gave. For treating your quiet like it meant you had nothing to say. His voice roughened. For needing a room full of people to tell me what I should have known when you were standing right beside me. Claire looked through the glass toward the hospital chapel, its stained windows glowing faintly in the dark. You did not lose me because I had nothing, Nathan. You lost me because you thought nothing I had was worth noticing. He closed his eyes briefly. I know. Do you? I am beginning to. That answer, at least, had the decency not to pretend it was complete. Claire appreciated that more than she wanted to. I did not do this to punish you, she said. I know it looks that way from where you are standing, but that is because you are still standing in the center of your own story. He looked down, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was work, perhaps the first honest work he had done outside an operating room in years. Can I make it right? He asked. Claire almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because the question was so painfully human, as if a ruined house could be rebuilt by asking where to put the first nail. Not with me, she said gently. But there will be families who need your skill, children who need your attention, nurses who deserve your respect. Start there. Nathan's face shifted, grief and shame passing through it without spectacle. And you? I started over a long time ago. She touched the frame under her arm. Tonight was not my beginning. It was only the night everyone else found out. Behind them, applause rose again as Emily's video message replayed for guests who had missed part of it. Claire looked back once at the atrium, at the stage, at the tables, at the world that had mistaken her for ordinary because she had never bothered to announce her power in a louder voice. Then she walked toward the pediatric wing instead of the ballroom. Grace met her near the elevators with a tired smile. Emily is asking whether secret angels get visiting hours. Claire laughed softly. Only the ones with proper badges. In the recovery room, Emily was awake enough to smile when Claire entered. Dana stood and hugged her again, this time without trembling. Claire placed the frame drawing on the small table where Emily could see it. The secret person loved it, she said. Emily's eyes shone. I knew it was you. Did you? You looked like someone who could fix a money problem. Claire sat beside the bed and took her small hand carefully. I hope someday you fix something too. Emily yawned. Maybe dragons. That would be a noble profession. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered beyond the hospital glass, indifferent and beautiful. Downstairs, people would keep talking. Nathan would carry what he had learned, or he would not. Vanessa would adjust, or she would not. The board would probably invent 3 new committees by breakfast, because humanity does enjoy turning miracles into paperwork. But upstairs, a little girl slept with a repaired heart. A mother breathed without fear for the first time in weeks, and Claire Whitmore understood the shape of her own victory at last. It was not revenge. It was not applause. It was not the stunned silence of the man who had underestimated her. It was this quiet room, this steady monitor, this second chance purchased not for recognition, but for life. And as Claire sat in the soft blue glow beside Emily's bed, she knew that the strongest kind of power was not the kind that demanded to be seen. It was the kind that entered unseen, changed everything, and left behind hope where despair had been. The morning after the gala, St. Mercy woke under a different kind of silence, not the anxious silence of waiting rooms or the polished silence of board meetings, but the stunned quiet that follows when truth has rearranged the furniture and everyone is pretending they know where to sit. Claire arrived just after 7, wearing the same gray coat she had worn on her first day, because some victories do not require new clothes, despite what department stores and insecure people keep trying to suggest. The lobby receptionist looked up immediately this time. "Good morning, Ms. Whitmore," she said, sitting a little straighter. Claire paused, not unkindly. "Good morning." The woman's cheeks colored, and Claire let the moment pass without punishment. That had become the strange work of the day, accepting apology without allowing it to purchase forgetting. In the development office, Molly had placed a cup of coffee on Claire's desk and written on the lid, "Not poisoned, probably." Claire laughed softly, then opened the stack of messages waiting for her. There were emails from board members, local reporters, parents, donors, and strangers who had heard about the fund before breakfast because modern humanity could not keep a secret unless it involved someone's browser history. Dr. Hayes had already issued a short statement making clear that the CW Angel Fund would remain focused on pediatric access, uninsured families, and long-term care support. No naming rights. No ceremonial wall. No donor portrait with lighting so dramatic it could make a dentist look like a founding father. By 9, Claire was walking the pediatric floor with Grace Miller, reviewing the first list of families whose cases could now be reconsidered. A boy from Newark who needed post-surgery therapy his insurance had denied. A toddler from Jersey City whose parents were sleeping in their car to stay near the hospital. A 12-year-old girl whose medication costs had turned every month into a math problem with no humane answer. Claire listened to each story carefully, writing notes in the blue ink pen she had used to sign the original transfer. "You understand this will grow," Grace said as they stopped outside Emily's room. "Need always does. Then the fund will grow with it." Grace studied her. Most people would have stopped at one miracle. Claire looked through the window. Emily was sitting up in bed, pale but brighter, making Dana hold the stuffed rabbit upright while she explained something with great authority. "Miracles are unreliable," Claire said. "Systems are better." Grace smiled. "That is the least sentimental, generous thing I have ever heard." "Good. Sentiment is how hospitals get wings named after men who avoided taxes." Inside the room, Emily waved with more energy than she had the night before. "Claire, the secret angel is famous now," she announced. "Unfortunately," Claire said, stepping in. Dana stood and hugged her again, this time with the steadiness of someone whose gratitude had found a place to rest. "I saw the news this morning," Dana said. "They showed the hospital, not Emily's face, just like Dr. Hayes promised. They said the fund is going to help other children too." "It is." Emily pointed at the framed drawing on the table. "You should put that in your office." "I was thinking of keeping it where I can see it every day." "Good. It will remind you to help dragons." "A very demanding mission." Dana's smile faded slightly. "People will ask for so much from you now." Claire looked at the child, then at the mother who had spent weeks believing money might decide whether her daughter lived. "Then we will learn to say yes carefully and no honestly." Later that afternoon, Nathan found Claire in the chapel courtyard, where rain had left the stone benches dark and clean. He did not wear his white coat. Without it, he looked less like a title and more like a man still deciding whether shame could become useful. "I spoke to Emily," he said. "She told me dragons need doctors who listen. She is wise. She also told me I should listen to nurses more." Claire's mouth curved. "She is extremely wise." Nathan gave a small, tired smile, then let it go. "I resigned from the gala committee." Claire looked at him, surprised despite herself. "That committee mostly discusses linens and donor egos." "I know. I was very qualified." The joke was small but honest, and for once it did not ask her to soften the room for him. "I asked Samuel to put me on the Pediatric Access Review Board instead. As a physician, not as a face for anything." Claire watched the rainwater drip from the courtyard railing. "That would be good work." "I want it to be." He took a breath. "I do not expect that to change anything between us." "Good." He nodded, accepting the boundary without trying to decorate it. "Progress, apparently, could be ugly and still count. I hope someday I become the kind of man who would have deserved the woman you were then." Claire turned to him fully. "Do not make your growth a monument to me, Nathan. Make it useful to someone else." The words landed, and this time he did not flinch away from them. "I will try. Try where people can benefit from it." He looked toward the hospital windows, toward the floors where children slept, cried, healed, and waited. "I will." When he left, Claire stayed in the courtyard a little longer, letting the cold air clear the last of the gala's perfume from her memory. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years earlier, the one who believed being unseen meant she had disappeared. She wished she could tell that woman the truth. Invisibility was not the end. Sometimes it was a place to gather strength where no one thought to look. By sunset, Claire returned to her new office, though she had refused the largest one Dr. Hayes offered, because she had no interest in occupying space just to prove she could. She placed Emily's framed angel on the windowsill facing the pediatric wing. Below it, the city moved through its evening traffic, full of people carrying private disasters behind ordinary faces. There would be more children, more forms, more board meetings, more polite arguments with people who thought compassion should be marketable. There would be mistakes too, because even good systems were built by humans, and humans, as a species, seemed determined to make paperwork a spiritual test. But there would also be doors opening where they had once been closed. There would be parents who heard yes before despair swallowed them. There would be nurses who had resources instead of only sympathy. There would be children who got to grow up, complain about homework, hate vegetables, love books, become impossible teenagers, and live long enough to forget how close they once came to being reduced to a hospital balance sheet. Claire sat at her desk as the first lights came on across the city. Her phone buzzed with another message from Dana, a picture of Emily asleep with the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Claire smiled, saved it, and placed the phone beside the framed drawing. The world had not become fair overnight. It never did. But one corner of it had shifted because one woman stopped waiting to be recognized before doing what was right. And for Claire Whitmore, that was enough. Not applause, not revenge, not Nathan's regret, just the quiet knowledge that power, when finally placed in the service of mercy, could become something better than victory. It could become a beginning.